Hey guys, and welcome to our webinar. Today we are going to discuss the topic of onboarding for admins of business and enterprise accounts. Our session is going to take about an hour of your time, and we will finish with a Q&A session. So if any questions emerge during the webinar, feel free to type them into the question box of the webinar interface, and I will be happy to discuss them with you at the end of the session. Also, please let me know if you cannot hear me well or do not see the presentation that I'm showing, so I will do my best to fix that. I would like to start with introducing myself. My name is Artem and I'm a customer success manager here at Wrike. The main goal of my role is to help you use Wrike in the most efficient way. This is our agenda for today. I will start our conversation talking about why do companies choose Wrike as a project management and collaboration tool. I will then guide you through the fundamentals and explain the essential framework of Wrike. I will provide the best practices of setting up your workspace and touch upon several specific functionalities in detail. I will also show you how to invite your team into the account and provide you with a list of additional resources that you will be able to use to quickly become a Wrike expert. So, why Wrike? Why do companies choose Wrike as a project management and collaboration tool? Mostly, this happens because companies have common collaboration and work management pain points. We all remember situations when some very important project details were lost in a huge chain of emails, and this can be especially irritating if these emails have been sent by the members of the same department or even team. Also, modern teams tend to use a lot of different tools for communication, like emails, Skype, Slack, WhatsApp messages, and others. And again, when you need to see the full picture, it might be pretty time-consuming to gather all the pieces from the various sources. When the work is not properly distributed among the members of the team, it can lead to stress, and of course we all want to avoid that stress. And finally, we want to save our time, not to waste it on useless activities such as endless status update meetings, and to give every team member sufficient time to perform his or her work. Now I would like to kindly ask you to pay some extra attention because I'm starting to talk about the fundamentals, the essential framework of Wrike. If you do not understand these building blocks, it would be pretty difficult for you to understand everything I'm going to talk about later. Wrike consists of four main building blocks: spaces, folders, projects, and tasks. You can see spaces, folders, and projects on the left-hand side navigation panel. It is easy to distinguish spaces from folders and projects because their names are bolded and they have the small circle avatars to the left of their names. Also, you can distinguish projects from folders because projects have these small clipboard icons to the right of their names. So in this particular screenshot, creative is a space, backlog is a folder, and for example, serial banner ad is a project. And if you click on any given space, project, or a folder, you will see a list of tasks that are residing inside, if any, in the middle panel. Now, let's talk about each building block in detail. Each space is a central hub for your team's work. So basically, every information that the team needs to address on the regular basis should be residing in that team's space. And of course, it includes projects, folders, and tasks. Also, each space has a bookmark sections that allows to store all the items the team is using on the regular basis. And I'm talking about both Wrike-related items like dashboards, reports, request forms, and some external items like external links to the websites or any other resources that the team is using. For example, the link to the team's Slack channel. The second building block is a folder, and folder is your organizer, so you can use folders to organize the structure within a space. For example, if you organize your space by team or by department, then each folder representing a certain workflow can live in that space. For example, if we have a creative space, it can have folders for design, photography, digital, and other workflows. Then we have a project. Project is in essence containing many tasks dedicated to a single goal. So if a major work needs to be done and it can be divided into a number of actionable steps, then you are definitely thinking about a project that you are going to populate with tasks. Due to the fact that you are using either business or enterprise subscription, you have access to reports. So not only can you build your reports based on tasks, but you can also build project-based reports. Also, if you have projects that you deliver with your team on the regular basis, on the repetitive basis, then you can create templates and quickly get started on repetitive projects with the help of these templates. And finally, we have a task, the main actionable unit in Wrike. Task is a place where work gets done. Each task has more than a dozen of different attributes, and during our onboarding webinars for the new users, we actually go through every single attribute a task has. So if your team is still not familiar with the basics, my first recommendation to you would be to have your team members attend an onboarding webinar for the new users. I will provide you with the link to it later. As I said, each task has a lot of different attributes, but I would like to highlight 3 of them from the very beginning. And these attributes are tasks status, assignee, and time frame. When the task is assigned, every member of your team has a clear understanding who is responsible for this particular part of the work. When the task is properly scheduled and the start and due dates are correctly set up, it is very easy for your team to prioritize the work on the daily basis. And finally, task status represents the stage this particular part of work is currently in. The last thing that I would like to say before we dive into the demo account is the fact that you are able to communicate with the members of your team on the level of any item in Wrike. So it can be done on the level of the folder, on the level of the project, and of course on the task level. Alright, so now I'm jumping into the demo account and I would like to provide several tips of organizing your workspace. I've started with the essential framework of Wrike, and when I was talking about spaces, I told you that a good practice is for every team to have a dedicated space. If only one team is going to use Wrike, so if this is your case, then you can use a different attribute for spaces. For example, you can have several project categories like internal projects or external projects. Or you can have several categories of the clients, like enterprise clients, small and medium business clients, and maybe some other clients. So for every major attribute, you can create a dedicated space, and all the items that are related to that attribute are going to reside in that space. For example, here I have a creative space, and all the projects that creative team is working on are residing here. Another great thing about spaces is that each of them has a bookmarks section. I've also mentioned that you can populate the bookmarks section with all the items team needs to address on the regular basis. As you can see, the bookmarks section of the creative space contains links to all important Wrike and not Wrike related items in it. For example, here we can see the team's dashboards, request form, folder, report, project, and even 2 external links to the help center and to the team's Slack channel. There are several things that we at Wrike strongly recommend need to be created in every Wrike account. Firstly, it's the knowledge base folder. In my example, I have an office space that is used by different teams. So basically they are so if any team member is not certain on where a particular item needs to be residing in because it is relevant to different teams simultaneously, so they put these items into the office space and it is shared with everyone. So knowledge base folder. Why do you need this folder? Well, this folder can be a place where your team members will be able to find answers to all Wrike related questions. As you can see, I've already populated it with several important items. Firstly, I have a task called Core Rules, and this task actually lists the rules that we want to encourage for the users in the Wrike account. Of course, you can come up with any number of rules that make sense to you, but we recommend to start with these three. Rule number 1. If it is not in Wrike, then it doesn't exist. This rule encourages members of your team to constantly update their tasks and projects. Rule number 2. Keep everything assigned. If all the work is assigned, then everyone has a clear understanding of who is responsible for what part of work, and there is no stress about it. And finally, keep everything scheduled. Again, if all the work is scheduled, then it is super easy for your team members to prioritize the work on the daily basis. What else do we have here? We have a task called folder tree help. Each item in Wrike allows you to get a permalink to it. Permalink is a dynamic link that contains the item's current name, and if we get a permalink to a task, it will also contain its current status. As you can see, I have just gotten the permalink to this folder tree help task and pasted into the description of this very same task. And not only does it contain the name of the task, but also its current status. Information in the permalink is dynamically updated, so if I choose to rename this task or change its status, the changes will be visible in the permalink as well. You might think, why do I need these permalinks? Because my account is very simple. Well, try to think ahead. How would it look like in a year, in 3 years, and in 5 years? I would say that by that time, your team would complete dozens, maybe even hundreds of projects, and your left-hand side navigation panel would be a complicated multi-level essence. And that's exactly the type of situation when the folder tree help task comes handy. Because if any new employee starts using Wrike, you can just send that employee the link to this folder, and he or she will find it easy to navigate around your folders, projects, tasks, and spaces, because all the tips will be residing here. Another thing that we strongly recommend is to create an archive folder for the work that your team has completed or put on hold from the beginning of your Wrike usage. You can place the archive folder either in some general space like office space I have added here, or you can have each team create a dedicated archive folder. For example, as you can see, my creative team here has a separate archive folder, and they have organized all the projects here chronologically. So at the top level, they have subfolders representing years. Then at the middle level, they have subfolders representing months. And finally, at the bottom level, there are projects that the team has completed or put on hold during this month. Not only does the system make it easy to find out what projects were completed when, but also it makes super convenient the process of building historical reports based on the work you have completed last quarter, last year, maybe last couple of years. So yeah. And another problem that you are solving by adding the archive folder to one of your spaces is the fact that your space will not be overloaded with the projects your team is currently not working on. So it would be much easier to navigate around the items residing there. Alright, great. So now you know the basics of organizing your folder structure, and it is time to create our first project. Right now you are all participating in the webinar that I deliver, so what I'm going to do now is create a project for today's webinar. In my example, the webinar team is responsible for delivering webinars, so I'm going to build a project for today's webinar. As you can see, I have a habit of naming all my webinar projects by the date when they are delivered. Today it is the 27th of May, so I'm going to add the project with the same name to the May folder. I right-click the folder, hover over Add, and choose a project from this menu. So I'm calling it 27th of May 2019, and I click Create. The project is instantly added to the folder that I have selected. But what is a project without the tasks? Let's start populating this project with the actionable steps of which it consists of. So when I need to deliver a webinar, I perform 4 consequent steps. The first one is brainstorm on ideas. Then I usually write a script. Afterwards, I usually prepare a presentation. And finally, I deliver a webinar. Alright, we have added all 4 tasks that are part of this project. Now let's start following the rules that I have announced earlier. And if you remember, rule number 2 said keep everything assigned. I select the first task called brainstorm for ideas and I assign it to, let's say, N. So N is now responsible for working on this task. I know that the same person is going to be responsible for the 3 remaining tasks, so to speed up the process of assigning these tasks, I'm going to use mass actions. I click the mass edit button located at the top panel above the list of tasks and check the checkboxes next to the tasks that I would like to mass select. Now, once I have selected more than one task, mass edit panel opened on the right hand side of the workspace. Here I choose the Add Assignee option and choose the user who is going to be responsible for the 3 remaining tasks. Let it be Michael. Alright, all 4 tasks are now properly assigned. What do we do next? Well, the next step would be connecting these tasks into a dependency chain, because all 4 tasks need to be completed in a certain order. I cannot prepare a presentation until I have a script ready, nor can I, for example, conduct a webinar until I have prepared a presentation. The easiest way to connect tasks with dependencies is doing that on the Gantt chart view. But now we have a small problem. You can only see the tasks on the Gantt chart view that you have already scheduled, and none of these 4 tasks has yet been scheduled. So I'm going to use mass actions again, but this time I click Select All to choose all 4 tasks. I click Reschedule on the right hand side Mass Actions panel and choose Today, just for these tasks to appear on the Gantt chart. I'm going to reschedule them directly there. Now I switch from the list view to the Gantt chart view. I'm going to collapse the table part. Oh, it's already collapsed. Alright, we do not need that at the moment. And right now I will just start connecting these tasks. I hover over the first task, and as you can see, there are 2 circles in the beginning of the tasks bar and at the end of the tasks bar. These circles allow you to establish different types of dependencies. So if, for example, 2 tasks need to be started simultaneously, I would connect them with start to start dependency. But in my case, all tasks need to be completed one after another. So I'm going to use finish to start dependency type for all the 3 cases here. So dependency number 1, dependency number 2, and dependency number 3. Very simple. I'm also going to convert the last task to a milestone. Just like in actual projects, a milestone in Wrike is a very important step. In smaller projects, milestones are usually the ending phase of the project. But larger projects can have several milestones in the middle. The last thing that we will need to do here is to reschedule the whole project, because we were creating it for today's webinar. But when I have added the dependencies, the second, third, and fourth tasks were rescheduled. So the fourth task is now scheduled for the 30th of May, and we want the last task to be scheduled for the 27th of May. If I just rescheduled the first task like this, the second and third tasks would move, but not the fourth one, because when you reschedule one of the tasks, the milestone remains intact. So if we want to reschedule the whole dependency chain, we would need to hold the Shift button on the keyboard and only then drag the task to the selected date. Then the whole dependency chain gets rescheduled. Alright, our project is ready. We can now start working on it. Well, and both Anne and Michael can now start working on their respective tasks. If you have any questions here, if you want me to elaborate on any particular step of setting up a project, please leave your questions in the question box of the webinar interface. And I am moving to our second topic. It is templates. I've mentioned in the very beginning of the webinar that template is a perfect choice if you need to quickly get started on the projects that you conduct on the repetitive basis. I said that I deliver a lot of webinars, and all my webinars contain the same 4 steps. So if they are the same, I can actually create a template for the webinar, and whenever I would need to quickly get started on a new webinar, I would simply launch the new project from a template. But how do I create a template? It is very simple. I right-click the project and click Duplicate, where I will need to enter the name, so I will just call it New Webinar Template, and I will place it into the Templates folder, so F Templates. Alright, great. What else? I click Duplicate, and the template is created in the folder that I have specified. Here it is. Let's say I'm going to conduct another webinar tomorrow. It's going to be the 28th of May. All the tasks will have the same assignees, so the only thing that is going to be changed is the due dates of all the tasks. I click the template this time and click Duplicate. I can start setting up my new project. So it's going to be 28th of May 2019. I will place it into the May folder. And I will also check the reschedule checkbox because I want this new project to have different due dates, and I set the last task and date to the 28th of May. Alright, all done. I can click Duplicate and the project gets created from a template. As you can see, it is placed into the May folder. So now I can easily, I have selected the wrong folder here. I needed to use the folder for the, not in the creative team, but in another team. Well, I can easily change that. So I've accidentally placed it into the archive. What I'm able to do, I can actually tag it into our May folder where the project should actually be residing in. So tagging in Wrike, it means actually putting an item into a folder, project, or a space. Below the item's name, and I'm intentionally saying item, not project, because the same logic is applied to tagging tasks into folders, tagging, for example, folders into spaces, and so on. So I need to simply click the plus icon below the item's name and just start typing the name of the folder into which I would like to tag this project. So I have selected the webinar May folder, and as you can see, this project instantly appeared in the 05 May folder. So I have accidentally placed it into the archive folder, so I can simply untag it from the archive, and now no confusion is here. So that's how you can quickly get started on the repetitive projects. Our next topic is workflows. So every task, one of the main attributes of every task is a status. So by default, users are able to switch between 4 different statuses. They are active, completed, deferred, and cancelled. But as you can see, I have a lot of other workflows existing in my account. Long story short, a custom workflow is a group of statuses that represents a particular business process that you have in your organization. So for every stage your tasks go through, you can add a status. Where can you do that, and who can add new custom workflows? Well, you can do that in account management, and this can only be performed by account administrators. So I click on my name and go to account management. Here in account management, on the left-hand side panel, you would need to select the workflow tab. Just give it a second to load. Sorry. All right, perfect. So on the left hand side panel, you need to choose the workflow tab, and you will be taken to the page where all your custom workflows are residing in. So if you have just added a new Wrike account, you will only see a default workflow here. But if some of your admins have already created certain custom workflows, you will see a list of them here. I'm sorry for the short delay. There is something with the internet connection today. So just give it a couple of more seconds. All right, perfect. So as you can see, I have a lot of different custom workflows already created for this account. For example, my marketing team has Wrike for Marketers workflow, and it contains a lot of different statuses marketing tasks go through before they can be completed. So as you can see, the first status is new, then we have assigned, in progress, in review, approved, and so on. There is one rule related to custom workflows that you need to remember. Each custom workflow needs to have at least one status in active and completed status groups. So you can rename them, of course, but at least one needs to reside here and one status needs to reside here. Let's say the sales team had just started using Wrike, so what we're going to do now is creating a new custom workflow for them. I click the new workflow button and start setting it up. I'm going to call it sales workflow. Now, as you can see, one status in active and completed status group is already residing. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start by renaming the status called active to new opportunity. All right. Now, we'll need several additional statuses here. So what else do we need in the active status group? We will need something like cross-sell, then maybe upsell. Then we will add a status called paperwork. If the deal is closed, we want a status called closed won. If a deal is lost, we want a status called closed lost. And if any delay is here, we want a status called on hold. All right, we have added all the statuses that are required for the sales team. And the last thing that I'm going to do here, so let's say I'm a manager of the sales team and I want to be notified about any deal that has been closed, lost. So I click on the status, and as you can see, there is an option here called assign on status change. So what it allows me to do, it allows me to select a certain user. I'm selecting myself. So whenever any task receives this particular status called closed, lost, I will be automatically added as an additional assignee to that task. And due to the fact that Wrike notifies you whenever you are added as an assignee, I will never miss any cases when any deal was lost for any reason. Maybe I would want to reach out to the customer myself. Maybe I would want to have a one-on-one with the sales rep. Whatever the reason is, I will never miss any such cases. We are good to go, and I click the save button, and we are ready to go back to our workspace. The last thing that we will need to do here is to apply this newly created custom workflow to the sales folder. So I will need to find the sales department folder here, and here it is. I right-click the folder, hover over change workflow, and choose the workflow that we have just created, sales workflow. Now let's check how it works. Let's say we have just started negotiations with the company called Star Incorporated. And let's say Brian is our sales representative here. So I'm assigning this task to him. All right, Brian is now the assignee. So as you can see, once the task got created here, it received the status called new opportunity, because by default, all tasks that are created in a folder to which a certain workflow is applied receive the first status from the active status group of that custom workflow. So Brian starts negotiating with the client, he starts cross-selling, then upselling, then he does some paperwork, and then something went wrong. and the deal was lost for some reason. So Brian changes the status to closed lost. And as you can see, I was instantly added as the second assignee to this task. So due to the fact that I have selected the assign on status change and added myself here, I just received a notification from Wrike about this task. So I will never miss anything that requires my attention. That's how you can build custom workflows and even partially automate your processes with them. All right. I hope everything is clear here. Again, I'll be happy to go through your questions if any emerge. And we are moving to our next topic called request forms. You can use request forms to streamline the intake process, and request forms can be only created by account administrators. When you click the plus button at the top panel of the workspace, you can go to requests and you will be taken to a list of request forms that already exist in your account. So if you have not yet added any, well, you will see no forms here. Request forms can be only added by account administrator. What does a request form do? Well, let's just quickly open one of the forms and quickly check what it can do. This form is called new hire setup. So in our demo organization, it is used whenever a new team member starts working in our company and we need to just prepare everything for that person. So I will just fill it in for myself. So Artem, new hire location, New York, onboarding materials, 1 month training, department, let it be analytics, new hire job title role analyst, reports to, let's say, Simon, first working day, let it be today, groups to be added to analytics, team, hardware requirements, laptop, headset, swag, software requirements, let's say Wrike, Zoom, and Adobe Creative Suite. So I click submit, and what happens next depends entirely on how the form has been set up. This particular form is set up in the way so it triggers the creation of a task in a certain folder. And as you can see, the task already contains all the answers I have provided when I was filling in this form. Alright, so that's how a simple form works. But you can make it very complicated. You can make a form even trigger a creation of a project from a template. And in addition to that, every request form can be made external, and it means that it can be submitted even by the person who is not registered in your Wrike account. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do right now. Let's say we want to give our customers an opportunity to request a webinar from us. And we don't want to add our customers as users to our Wrike account. So how do we address this problem? Well, with an external request form. To create a new request form, I click on my name and go back to account management, the very same place where we were adding a new custom workflow, but this time I open the request forms tab. All right. I'm sorry again. Internet connection keeps upsetting me today. All right, and I choose the request forms tab. All right. So I'm going to recreate this form from scratch so you will know how it can be done. So I click the new form button and I'm going to call this one request for webinar. So we will need to start by adding the questions we would like the person to provide answers to. Question number 1 is going to be a short answer question type and it's going to be company name. I will mark it as required, so the form will not be submittable unless the answer to this question is provided. Question number 2, it's going to be a drop-down question type and we want it to be webinar type. We're going to leave two options here, beginner and advanced. All right. Question number 3 is going to be a date question type, and it's going to be webinar date. Now, what else? I'm going to add a paragraph question type, and please provide a list of topics you would like us to focus on. All right. We have added all the questions that we needed to have, and now it's time to look at the form's settings. As you can see, the first thing that I'm doing is checking the enable the public link checkbox. So if that is done, the form is made external. As I already mentioned, if a form is external, it means that it can be submitted even by the person who is not registered in your Wrike account, but that person would need to have a link to this form. Now, let's have a look at the lower section of the form settings, and here actually we can specify what's going to happen once the form is submitted. We have a lot of options here, but I'm going to choose the option called duplicate project. So basically, a form will trigger the creation of a project from a template. I'm going to use a template that we have created with you earlier today called new webinar template. So yeah, this one. All right. Now, where do we want this project to be residing in? I'm selecting a folder called request for webinars. So this is one of the folders I have created in advance. I can also choose the default owner for the projects. So due to the fact that I'm usually the person responsible for the project, for all webinar projects, I'm selecting myself here. I also want to map the project end date to the webinar date question. So I get it from here. So whatever the person submitting the form answers here in the webinar date question will be aligned with the project end date. And finally, I'm going to get a prefix from the company name question and add it to the beginning of each of the tasks names. This might look a bit complicated, but actually it is pretty easy. Once you get a chance to play with request forms and create the first form, you will understand that it is all super simple. I finish by clicking Publish button, and the first thing that I receive is actually an external link to that form. I'm going to copy it now and paste it into another tab of my browser. So let's look how this form looks like from outside of Wrike, to the person who just has the link, who is not a member of our Wrike account. So what we're going to do now, we're going to fill in this form and then go back to the workspace and check what happened there. Company name, let's say it's Star Incorporated. Webinar type, let's say we want an advanced webinar this Thursday, and we want the following topics to be covered: dashboards, reports, request forms. All right, I click next, and only if the form is external, if it is submitted externally, then it will also ask the person to provide his or her name and email address. Okay, so I click submit, and Wrike tells us that the form has been successfully sent. Now let's go back to the workspace and check what had happened there. And of course, we do know what had happened. A project had been just created from a template and placed into the folder called Request for Webinars. So here it is, Request for Webinars, and our project should be at the very bottom of this folder. Let's have a quick look at it. Firstly, as you can see, the project already contains the description of the project already contains all the answers I have provided when I was filling in this form. So no information is lost. Finish date of the project is the 30th of May. It is aligned with the answer we have provided to the date of the webinar question. I'm already assigned as the owner of this project because this is a default setting that we have specified in the form's settings. And of course, this project already contains all 4 tasks that were part of our template, including brainstorm for ideas and others. All the tasks are already assigned, scheduled, and the date of the last task is the 30th of May, just like we wanted it to be. Due to the fact that we have mapped prefix to the company name question, this prefix was added to the beginning of each of the tasks' names. And if we open our newly created project on the Gantt chart view, we would also see that all tasks retained dependencies between each other. So, and of course, this form can also be submitted from your Wrike account. So you can just click on the plus button, go to requests, and choose request for webinar request form, and fill it in from the inside, from the Wrike workspace. All right. I hope you now have at least a general understanding of how request forms work, and we have a couple of more topics to discuss today. Firstly, it is inviting users into your Wrike account. The easiest way to do that is by clicking the Add Users button at the bottom right-hand corner of the workspace. You need to start by typing the user's email, and then you need to choose user type. We have 3 options available here: regular users, external users, and collaborators. Regular users have all actions available to them in the Wrike account, with a couple of exceptions reserved for account admins. External users have some limitations compared to regular users. For example, external users cannot invite users into a Wrike account, and they cannot share any items. And finally, we have collaborators. Collaborator is more of a view mode license type. They have only 3 actions available to them, and they include leaving comments and mentions, attaching files, and changing the status of a project or a task. Good thing about collaborators is that they do not occupy paid seat, and I would say one of the most common example of involving collaborators is inviting representatives of your customers or any other external stakeholders. Maybe you're working with a printing house and you have a certain person there with whom you are collaborating on the regular basis, so it might be a good idea to invite that person as a collaborator into your Wrike account. You also have a chance here to add the person to one of the user groups that you might have already created. So a user group is an asset that allows you to group your users. This can also be done only by account admins in account management in the users tab on the left-hand side panel. So a good practice is to create a user group for every team or department working in your organization. Why do you need user groups? There are 2 good reasons why you need them. Firstly, it makes super easy to make department-wide or team-wide announcements. For example, here in the folder called Urgent, we have a task called Initial Work. And let's say I want to tell about this task to all the members of the creative team. What I'm doing here, I'm simply going to the comments section, entering the add symbol, and choose the whole creative team user group. So I can leave a message. Hey guys, please have a look at this task. We'll need some help here later. So once I click send, a notification containing this message appears in the inbox of each of the users who is a part of this user group. So it's like super easy way to make team-wide or company-wide announcements. And another great thing that user groups can help you with is that user groups make sharing super easy. So instead of sharing a certain Wrike item with all the users one by one, you can just add them to the relevant user group and share certain folders, projects, tasks, and spaces with the whole user group. So you will make sure that you have not forgotten any of the users. Actually, let's discuss sharing in detail because it is a very important topic in Wrike. Sharing means access and visibility. In order to see any item in Wrike, it needs to be shared with a user. Wrike has top-down sharing logic. What does it mean? It means that if you share a top-level item, all the descendant items are shared as well. For example, if I invite one of the users here to this creative space, for example, Peter, and click Save, Peter automatically is granted access to all items residing in this space, including all folders, all projects, and of course all the tasks that are part of these projects. Let me visualize how sharing works on the example of a certain folder. For example, here I have a folder called Bright Interactive. Let's open it and go to the folder info panel. As you can see, this folder is currently shared with 3 users and 1 user group. Let me add another person here. For example, Michael. I click Save, and by doing that, I provide access to the Bright Interactive folder to Michael. Now let's go to the lower level and open one of the subfolders here, for example, Digital. I open the subfolder, and as you can see, Michael has already been shared with the subfolder as well. I have not manually shared Digital folder with him. He has access because I have shared the top level item with him, which in this example is Bright Interactive. And if I go to the more granular level and open one of the tasks here and go to shared with, I can also see Michael in the list of users who have access to this task. There are 2 ways of sharing in Wrike. The first way is just, well, opening the sharing manual, just like I have already done that, and choosing user or user group to whom or to which you would like to provide access to this item. And the second way is to mention that particular user on the level of that item. For example, right now, this task is not shared with N. I'm going to go here, mention N, and leave a message for her. Hey, could you please help me with this task? I click send, and 2 things are happening simultaneously. Firstly, Anne is now in the list of users who have access to this task. As you can see, she appeared in this list. And secondly, Anne had just received a notification containing my message into her inbox. So the action that I have just performed is called @mentioning. And @mentioning is a powerful functionality that allows you both to share items and to communicate with the members of your team. Also, due to the fact that Wrike has top-down sharing logic, if you tag any item into a folder or a project, all items that are residing, all users who had access to that folder or a project are instantly shared with, instantly get access to your item. For example, this particular task called December 2018 meeting, it resides in the Bright Interactive folder. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to tag it with creative space. So I'm going to basically add it to the creative space. I click the plus icon and start typing creative. Please have a look here before I have pressed enter. So it says that this task is shared with 6 users. I select the space, and as you can see, the number instantly changed. Now this task is shared with 11 users, and that happened because I have tagged this task into the creative team space, and more than 6 people have access to that space. So that's how sharing works in Wrike. Alright, that were all the topics that I was planning to cover today. Now it is time for your questions. I would like to remind you that you can type your questions into the question box of the webinar interface, and I'll be happy to answer them. While you are preparing your questions, I would like to showcase some additional resources that are available to you. And the first one is, of course, our Help Center, located at help.wrike.com. This is the place where you can find topics on all kinds, answers on any given topic. For example, reports, dashboards, any Wrike essence that might be of interest to you, you can find a nice article here. And a lot of articles have tutorial videos embedded into them. So if you're not a reader but you would like to watch videos, you can also do that here. You can also start live chat with our technical support, submit a request, or call us using this number. If you would like to dive deep into any particular topic, you can also attend our other webinars. You need to go to wrike.com/webinar and you will be taken to a page where all our webinars are residing in. If you remember, in the very beginning of our today's webinar, I told you that it is a good idea to have your team members attend our onboarding webinar for the new users. So if you go to wrike.com/webinar and open the Getting Started category, you will be able to find that session here. Let me actually get the link to it and paste it into the chat. All right. And of course, you're more than welcome to visit our community. Also accessible through the Help Center. So our community is the place where our customers share best practices and where you can get answers to any complicated questions from the right gurus. All right, I see there are no questions. I hope that's because you understood everything I was talking about. I would like to thank you very much for attending today's webinar, and I wish you the most productive rest of your week. Bye.